After acquiring their dream house, Ricky began the repairs on the outside, while Robin worked her decorating magic on the inside. Only 1 month later, they stood back and looked at the finished product. White paint for the siding, trimmed in green, and a new roof over the deck-style front porch. The place looked great. They were finally home. All was fine for the first few years they lived in the house. The neighbors were friendly enough and had even thrown a little get-together to welcome them to the neighborhood. Then a black cat appeared in the front yard. Ricky yelled at it to go away, but the cat ignored him. It was a sleek black Tom with piercing yellow eyes. He was sitting on his haunches under the holly tree in the front yard, staring at Ricky as he sat on the front porch. Ricky got an eerie feeling from the cat. After all, black cats were big in superstition as being familiars for witches, and also bad luck if one were to cross your path. What did that say about one that stayed in your path? Ricky didn't blame Robin, but she is the one who started it all by feeding that black menace. She would throw scraps out for him, which Ricky didn't mind because she would have thrown them out anyway. Blackie, as she called him, would gobble them up as if he hadn't eaten in weeks, but he seemed healthy and strong. Not one bone showed through his muscular physique. Over the years, Ricky had come to love sitting out on the front porch, watching the neighbors go by and waving to them, enjoying the shade cast by the holly tree. The cool breezes of spring and fall were wondrous, and even the summers weren't so bad thanks to the holly tree. The winters could be a little harsh, but even that didn't deter him from sitting outside watching the children play in the snow. They would build snowmen and have snowball fights, ride their sleds down the hill, barely missing the trees at the bottom of the hill where the road turned sharply left. The kids had 1 or 2 days of sledding before the plows would come through and clear the road. Now, every time Ricky goes outside to enjoy one of his cigars, Blackie is always sitting under the holly tree and staring at him with those yellow eyes. And it wasn't a pleasant look. It felt to Ricky like an "I'm gonna get rid of you" look. It became quite unnerving for Ricky after a while, but Robin thought he was being stupid. It was just a cat. Ricky understood Robin's feelings, because Blackie's expression would change whenever she was around. His expression would become soft and loving when directed at her. Soon 1 cat became 2, then 3. They just kept coming. Scraps were no longer enough to feed the darn things, and Robin had to start buying food for them. That wasn't what bothered Ricky. What bothered him was the fact that they all would sit on their haunches under the holly tree and stare at him. It got to the point where there were so many of them, he started to actually fear for his safety. He felt as though they were plotting his death as they stared at him. 10, 15, then 20. It seemed as if a new one would show up every day. There were cats of all shapes and sizes and colors. Even the kittens that are supposed to be so cute would sit with the others and watch every move he made. Robin felt like Ricky was being paranoid, but she didn't see them looking at him with those horrid cat eyes as they lovingly rubbed against her legs. She didn't notice them edging toward him as he walked to the car. It was him they didn't like. It was him they seemed to want out of the way. Then things started to happen. Ricky came out one morning and tripped over a toy car that had been left on the steps and broke his arm as he tried to catch his fall. Robin suggested one of the neighbor's kids had left it there, but he knew it was those damn cats. After the incident, and against Robin's wishes, Ricky began to set traps for the cats. He was determined to rid his yard of the horrible beasts. A week went by, and not one trap had been sprung. The cats were too smart for that. Desperate to get rid of the cats, Ricky sat out poison for them. He would mix it in with their food once Robin went back into the house after feeding them, but they wouldn't go near it. A few weeks later, the temperature dropped well below the freezing mark. Robin filled the cats' water bowls with fresh water before she went to bed. The next morning, Ricky came out to go to work and almost broke his neck as he slipped on the ice patch right in front of the door. It had to be a deliberate act, and of course, Ricky blamed the cats. That night, Ricky was awakened by scratching sounds at the screens covering the windows of his bedroom. He felt a chill and realized the windows were open. A black, claw-filled paw tore through the screen, and Blackie forced his way through the hole. Ricky tripped over his own feet and fell flat on his back as he tried to get away. He screamed in pain as Blackie jumped on his chest and dug his claws in fully. Soon all of the cats, 40 or 50 by now, were clawing and biting and tearing at his flesh as he tried to make his way to his feet. Through his painful screams and curses and the hissing and mewling of the cats, he faintly heard Robin calling him. Then he felt her hands on her shoulders as she shook him awake. Soaking with sweat, Ricky ignored her puzzled look and headed for the bathroom to take a shower. After a couple of weeks of no incidents from the cats, Ricky noticed that they seemed to have a different look about them as he left for work one morning. It was almost as if they were smiling. He thought that perhaps they were instituting some kind of a truce with him. Maybe they were finally starting to like him, or at least tolerate him. After all that had happened, he would be glad to end the hostilities with the cats. It had become a war he felt he could no longer win. He didn't think any more about it as he started the car and headed down the steep hill that made such a great sledding hill in the winter for the children. Nearing the bottom of the hill, where the road turned sharply to the left, Ricky hit the brakes, and the pedal went to the floor. It was impossible for him to miss the line of trees that began the small copse of woods at the bottom of the hill. Ricky, not being one to wear a seatbelt, was completely beheaded by the glass as his head crashed through the windshield. An investigation into the accident revealed that the brake lines seemed to have been chewed, not cut. It had been ruled just that, an accident. Robin dutifully mourned the loss of her husband, but she had the cats to comfort her. She and the cats lived very well on the insurance money she received from Ricky's death.